Good evening, everyone. Yeah. Sam, is that better? Okay, perfect. Good evening. Okay, Sam. This one's off. Okay. All right, let's try it again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bobby Brown. I'm the chair of the Bridgeport Board of Education. This evening, we have the firm online. The firm would actually is going to walk us through the process of how we got to where we are right now. The Board of Ed will be coming downstairs shortly to join us. This will be a dialogue or a question and answer with the candidate once the candidate does come down. Just keep in mind that this is a respectful environment, so I ask that you do not ask questions from the floor. Your questions will be put into the little container. The questions will come to me, and I will ask the candidate. Once the questions, we will start summing up questions around 7:45-ish, so that we can give the board an opportunity to break, everyone a chance to break, walk around, and then we'll start back up again at 8:15 for the next candidate. So I just ask that you guys be patient, be mindful, be respectful. Please do more listening than talking so that the candidate can hear every question and respond accordingly. I will read them as they are on the card. We do have questions that were online. Some of them did not pertain directly to this particular candidates or candidates in this particular search. However, I will bring attention to them, but this will not be an opportunity for those specific questions to be answered by that candidate. At this moment, I would like to introduce to some and present to others the firm. The firm will actually go over from top how we started, how we got here, how many candidates fell off, how many candidates continued. So at this moment, if you can just turn your eyes to the screen, Dr. Ferry and his team will start the process. Go ahead, Dr. Ferry, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, those of you that are in attendance. I wish I could see you. Ms. Brown, how many people are in the audience?
We got a full house, sir, and I think it's going to get even bigger.
Great. So I wish we could see those that are in the audience, and I hope some of you we had the opportunity to meet with during the stakeholder meeting process. Oh, there we go. And we really did enjoy meeting with you and having dialogue with you, because it is quite evident to Mr. Copeland and myself and Dr. Holt that there is a tremendous amount of passion in Bridgeport regarding the children that attend the Bridgeport Public Schools. And I was glad to hear, again, I didn't get into the details of the article, but we did see an article today that perhaps with the state budget, Bridgeport is going to be a beneficiary of that budget. And hopefully some of the funding that you so much desire, which was one of the major concerns that was shared with us, is going to come your way. And I hope that that comes to fruition. And because you certainly are a passionate community and passionate about the education of your students, and you want to be involved, which is great. We started this process with the board several months ago. And Mr. Copeland, please jump in anytime you wish. We advertised nationally. We put the advertisement in many national publications. We sent out over 1,900 email invitations to potential candidates that we have in our database. We contacted candidates. I had several conversations with candidates in Connecticut as well. However, the pool of candidates for the superintendency throughout the country is significantly getting shallower and shallower. We're in a very challenging times in education, and particularly superintendents who are sitting in their positions and they're very stable in their positions. They're under contract. They have a tendency to be reluctant to apply to move on to different positions, and we can understand that. Again, we're doing searches throughout the country, working on 2 searches in Florida, and two of the largest counties in Florida. And the number of candidates that applied for those positions were very similar to the number of applicants we had in Bridgeport. We started with 19 candidates. And what we then did was we vetted those candidates and we tested them against the criteria, tested them against what we heard from the community and the stakeholder groups. And we closely narrowed it down to 9. And we vetted those 9, contacted references, checked their credentials, etc., and determined that we would share 6 candidates with the Board of Education, and we sent out invitations for those candidates to prepare a video. We did formal background checks on those candidates, and that's when things started to change a little bit. Immediately when we started vetting out the 6, one of the candidates withdrew for reasons that were not really explained to us. So that narrowed it down to 5. So when we met with the board, we presented 5 candidates to the board, showed the videos, shared our reference checks, went into detail in terms of those candidates, had their background checks completed. And when we do the background check, we do their educational credentials, their criminal background, and their financial background to make sure there are no issues in any of those areas. When you're in charge of a budget the size of Bridgeport, you want to make sure that a candidate can take care of their own finances as well. So we do all of that. So the board then narrowed that candidate pool down after they saw the references and saw the videos down to 4. We contacted those 4 candidates. One of the candidates immediately withdrew as they were concerned about the transparency of the process going forward. And I'll give you an example. Your process is transparent because you have candidates coming before you tonight in terms of a community forum. Many school districts don't do that. Contrasting to that, in Florida, when the applicant pool is finalized after the deadline, all of the applicants' names get published in the newspaper with their resumes. So it gives us tremendous difficulty in terms of attracting sitting superintendents for positions in Florida, as an example. So that one candidate withdrew, and then we were down to 3. The board then interviewed those 3 candidates. Thorough interview, hour and a half for each candidate. They were all asked the same exact questions, which we prepared with the board. And the board was prepared to move forward the 3 candidates to you this evening so that you could have your input in terms of questioning the candidates and submitting the questions, as Ms. Brown highlighted, and get your impression. The board wanted to hear your impression and get your view in terms of what you hear from the candidates. So we contacted those 3 candidates, and unfortunately, one of those candidates at the last minute decided that this was not the right time for him to move. His family had a son that's a senior in high school, and we certainly wish that would have been a decision that was made beforehand. But sometimes those decisions are out of our control. And therefore, you have 2 candidates this evening that the board interviewed that they're presenting to you for your input. So we are appreciative of the work that the board did. We certainly worked very hard on this search. Again, we tried to get candidates from Connecticut to apply. For one reason or another, we could not get that accomplished. There were some other searches in Connecticut that happened before your search, and that could have been one of the issues. But so that's where we're at, and I do know that you'll have the opportunity to speak to 2 very talented candidates this evening, and I know that the board is interested in your input. So, Mr. Copeland, would you like to add anything to that? You got to unmute.
Yep, and Dr. Ferry, if you can just mute yourself as well. I think we were getting a little static back from your mic. Dr. Copeland,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you, sir.
Okay, great. I just wanted to emphasize some of the things that Dr. Ferry was saying, and one of the ones, because we all participated in the stakeholder meetings, and I had the privilege of gathering that all together to try and document the full stakeholder report. But one of the things we want to emphasize with all the candidates is it came through time and time again. Bridgeport's looking for consistency. Bridgeport's looking for people who want to be there. And we really honed in on that when we had our discussions with folks. This is a great opportunity. And I think passionate is a good word to describe the feedback we got from the community. So I know you're looking forward to hearing from both candidates tonight. And we think it's going to be a very elucidating experience. Thank you.
Ms. Brown, if I could add one more piece to this, just to let the public know, let the community know. Part of our process, we do not end after the board selects their superintendent. What we will then do is work with the new superintendent and the Board of Education on what we call Phase 5. And we come in and work with them on developing mutually agreed upon goals so that the superintendent clearly understands what the goals are going forward, how they're going to be evaluated on those goals. And then we also work very closely with the new superintendent and the board on roles and responsibilities, clarifying what the role of the superintendent is, clarifying what the role of the Board of Education is. And we will also work with the board and the superintendent on a communication plan so that there's outstanding communication between the superintendent and the board, and the superintendent and the board and the community. So we will stay with the new superintendent for the entire year. We, in many cases, stay longer. So I've worked, matter of fact, I just spoke with one of the candidates I placed in Long Island this week, and he's been there for 3 years. So we will work with the superintendent and stay with them. Both of us have, I think between the two of us, we have probably close to 45 years of experience as superintendent. And so we want to really share our expertise with the new superintendent and the board. That's something that I believe will be different this time than what has happened in the past. And I do want to echo what Mr. Copeland said. We value longevity. We know that longevity in the position is very, very important. So with that, Ms. Brown, I'll turn it over back to you. And thank you very much for all taking the time to come out this evening. It's very, very important. I'm going to mute.
Thank you, Dr. Ferry. Thank you, Dr. Copeland. And just want to also share this particular process has been a new one for most of our board members that have sat on this board. And for some, it has been another round for them. So I do appreciate the time that not only has the firm put forward, but also the board has put forward. I also appreciate the confidentiality that the board has put forward with keeping the candidates' names sealed. I will also share that we did not disclose that for the candidate, so the candidate was free to share their own. However, the board wanted to make sure that we kept it personal amongst us until you all met the candidate tonight. Just want to also keep in mind that you do have an opportunity again to ask any question that you would like for the candidate. As we do both sections, you'll be able to see and fill your questions out. If you happen to get a question while the candidate is speaking, feel free to go to the table, get an index card, write it down. It will go into the bucket. We will answer as many questions. We will go over as many questions as time will allow. Also want to mention that there is Spanish translation. You can call into the line. I'll say it for you. It's 203-993-6397. And then the ID is 207-42707 pound. So feel free to do that if you do need Spanish translation. Again, this has been an interesting process, one that we've all been learning from. Also want to keep in mind that the board has done has had the opportunity to meet with the candidate on a non-personal level. So that's where they are right now. They're actually, we have dinner with the candidate, get to know them outside of the question. So we get to feel and have an opportunity to know who they are. And that will take place also today with one of the candidate, and then tomorrow with the other candidate. And from there on tomorrow night, the board will, after the last candidate, sit down and make their selection of the candidate or have an idea where we feel the process is going. Then again, we invite you all, the same people that are in this room, to come back out on Monday, June 12th at 6:30 at this very same building and hear the announcement of that candidate. So again, I'll reiterate, tonight is one part of it. Tomorrow starts the second part of it. And then tomorrow they'll make their decision. From there, we'll meet back. Where are we meeting, everyone? Where are we meeting? All right, what time are we meeting? 6:30. Who should be there? All of you guys should be here tomorrow. On Monday, June 12th. Sorry, I caught myself. At 6:30 to hear the results of the candidate. Business will run as usual, as a normal Board of Education meeting will go. Then there will be a special meeting on June 15th where we'll discuss contract negotiations. The public is invited to that meeting as well. All right, here's our Board of Education members. You guys all can have a seat on the side. And tonight I would like to introduce you all to Dr. Carmela Levy. Levy David. So how it's gonna work, you're gonna speak into the mic. We have a ton of listed questions for you to answer. We'll answer as many until the time is up, and the firm is behind you. So if you wanted to say hey, and we'll get started in just a moment. Okay, so we'll get started in just a moment where you can do a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll start the questions. So give me a second. Up, yep, you're gonna push red, and then it's blinking, and then you'll be able to speak into it. So I will wait till all of our board members have had an opportunity to sit, and then we'll get started. Okay. Ready? All right, so we will get started. Dr. Carmela, can you give us a brief description of who you are? And then we'll start the questions.
Testing.
How is she doing, Sam? Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carmela Levy David, and I am so incredibly honored to be here before all of you today. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to meet all of you. Buenas noches, mi nombre es Carmela Levy David y quiero darles las gracias por estar presentes. Estoy sumamente honrada de estar enfrente de ustedes esta noche y quiero decirles un poco sobre la razón por la cual estoy considerando venir a Bridgeport. I have been an educator for over 26 years, and in the past 6 years, I have been an assistant superintendent for elementary and early childhood and basically anything else that is needed in a district with over 80,000 students and the most diverse school district in the state of Texas. He sido una educadora durante los últimos 26 años. Y durante ese tiempo, los últimos 6 han sido como asistente de la superintendente y en ese puesto trabajando en un distrito de más de 80,000 estudiantes, un distrito que es el más diverso en el estado de Texas. He tenido muchas oportunidades de liderazgo que me han preparado para estar con ustedes hoy. My background is both secondary and elementary. And in my role as a teacher, as a counselor, as an assistant principal, as a principal, and as an assistant superintendent, my goal is always to put students first, families first, to build partnerships, build community, and to ensure that everyone has a voice and is able to engage and be a part of making the biggest decision for the most invaluable resource in our community, which are our kids. So that is always my focus. What can we do to make things better for our students and for the amazing, incredible people who serve them? En mi carrera como maestra, ya sea como consejera, que también lo he hecho, como subdirectora, asistente del superintendente, mi meta siempre ha sido servir a los estudiantes. Mi meta siempre ha sido invertir en la persona más importante para todos ustedes, que son sus hijos. Y hacerlo de una manera que es inclusiva, donde todos tenemos una voz, todos podemos participar en el proceso, educarnos, ayudarnos y apoyar a las increíbles personas que educan a nuestros hijos cada día, que es lo más importante. Eso para mí tiene que ser lo primordial, siempre tener a los niños en mente como la obra más importante que llenamos en esta institución.
Thank you. So we'll start with our first question. Our first question is, if you become the next superintendent of Bridgeport Public Schools, how do you identify with the Bridgeport families and community and all stakeholders?
Thank you. There are Bridgeports all over the country. It's a beautiful city that you have here, full of beautiful people who, like my family, wanted nothing but the best for their kids. I am the great-granddaughter of Jamaican sugarcane farmers who immigrated to Panama at the turn of the century with a dream. And they were able to work and build and secure future generations. When I came along, Panama was a dictatorship. And my father had to make the difficult choice of taking his entire family, his children, his 4 children and his wife, to a different country in order to give his children an opportunity to survive and thrive. And as the superintendent of Bridgeport, I can relate to what it is to have a dream for your family, what it is to want them to do better, what it is to want your children to thrive and survive and succeed, what it is to want to ensure that you have people around you who are going to support you in that dream, who are going to provide you with the resources, the information, and who are going to lend you a hand. And we are in the wealthiest country in the world. We are in the best place to do that. So as superintendent, that is always my intention. I can fully relate to the history of this city, bonsoir, buenas noches, and to the different groups that compose Bridgeport. And I want to make sure that everyone has a seat at the table. Como decía en inglés, si me escogen para ser superintendente de esta ciudad, lo primordial para mí es continuar de llenar los sueños de mis padres. Yo soy la, tataranieta de un inmigrante de la isla de Jamaica que fue a Panamá buscando una oportunidad mejor para su familia, buscando un sueño que no existía en ese momento. Cuando yo nací, mi padre tuvo que hacer la misma decisión de traer a su familia a un país distinto porque Panamá estaba en una dictadura. Y él tomó esa decisión con mucho orgullo y con muchas agallas, que fue lo que tomó tomarla. Pero quiero hacerles saber que yo entiendo lo que es querer algo mejor para sus hijos. Entiendo lo que es tener que sacrificar y querer que haya personas que comprendan, que comuniquen, que abran paso que apoyen, que den la mano, que informen, que eduquen y que sean nuestros aliados en ese proceso de cada persona tener sus sueños ser realidad en el país más rico del mundo.
Thank you. Our next question is, what do you see as the top 3 priorities for Bridgeport Public Schools? It's a 2-part. And then the next part is, what is your entire plan to address all 3 of these areas?
Okay. The top 3 priorities for Bridgeport, first for me is instruction, ensuring that all of our students have rigorous, relevant, rich instruction that is going to support their future success and their social emotional development, that they feel supported, that we have the resources to ensure that they are not only successful in their gifts, which they're different for every kid, but they're also successful in their dreams. And I can tell you that the second priority, beyond providing that instruction and that social emotional foundation, is ensure that we're financially, fiscally stable and responsible and accountable district. That we are able to support our programs, we're able to support our staff, we're able to support every member of the Bridgeport family, and that we're able to also support partnerships with organizations that can better resource everyone in the district. And my third priority for Bridgeport is to make this a destination district where people not only aspire to come to, but know that their kids are going to have just as good an opportunity to learn and thrive as any kid in the suburbs. Tres metas: instrucción, desarrollo social y emocional, fiscalmente responsable. Si vamos a hacer un programa, hay que poder pagarlo. Y hay que saber dónde se fue la plata, ¿verdad? Y también que este sea un distrito donde los padres quieren venir, quieren traer a sus hijos, porque saben que les vamos a dar lo mejor y hasta mejor que lo que hay en los suburbios, hasta mejor de lo que tienen en Fairfield. So next part of the question was, how will I make that happen?
Yeah, what is your, I'm sorry, I correct myself. What is your entry plan to address all 3 of these areas? There you go.
Thank you. My entry plan is really simple. It's a 100-day plan where my first task is to engage and learn and listen and meet all of you, meet everyone in this wonderful district, in the city of Bridgeport, whether it's civic leaders, businessmen, religious leaders, anyone that has a voice and a stake in our district. I want to get to know them, and I want to hear what has worked and what hasn't at Bridgeport. That engagement process also includes meeting our staff, our students, our teachers, our leaders, and becoming a familiar face for them. The next stage is really doing a deep dive into our instruction and our finances. I want to know what we do well and what we can do better. And I also want to know how we have been effective with the money that we're allocated and how we can be more effective. And that's something that I want to examine deeply during that 100 days. I also want to be able to gather feedback from our staff, our students, and our community members. And I want to know what your dreams are for Bridgeport. And the last part of that 100 days for me is the process of just equipping myself. And that begins by providing our Board of Trustees with a detailed report of my findings and my recommendations. But my recommendations can only come after I have their input for how they want me to proceed. Their input is critical to my success as superintendent. And so engaging in that wonderful relationship building process with the board is going to be a critical part of that entry plan. But my goal is that at the end of the 100 days, everyone in this community is able to have a chance to share their thoughts with me. We're able to meet, we're able to break bread together, and that our board will also provide me with the priorities based on the feedback that I give them after the 100 days.
Thank you. Our next question is, let me just remind you, because I don't want to lose up all your time. If you do need Spanish translation, we do love that you are translating, but I don't want you to lose your time, and you can continue to. The number is 203-993-6397. The ID number is 207-42707#. So if you do need that, but she can continue as you please.
I'd like to say the
Sure.
La primera parte, los primeros 100 días que estoy aquí como superintendente, la primera parte es escuchar y aprender todo lo que yo pueda sobre el distrito y sobre la comunidad, tener acceso a conversaciones con ustedes, oír sus opiniones, qué funciona, qué no funciona, oír de los estudiantes, de los maestros, el personal. Y la segunda parte para mí que es importante es analizar a fondo la instrucción y también la posición financiera del distrito. La tercera parte es hacer un análisis de todo lo que aprenda para entonces poder presentárselo a nuestra junta directiva y recibir de parte de ellos las prioridades, a dónde quieren que yo empiece mi trabajo, que es tan importante en esta comunidad. Así que después de 100 días, yo debo tener una buena idea de cómo ustedes ven la jornada que vamos a tener que hacer juntos y también cómo ven las prioridades de este distrito.
Thank you. Our next question is, please share your experience with crafting a safe, equitable, and inclusive school system.
As a district leader, crafting a safe and equitable school system is something that we continuously work on. It is not the work of 1 year. It is not the work of a season. It is something that we refine every single day, day to day. The safety of our students requires deep collaboration with all of our district partners, our chief of police, our fire chief, our social, emotional, and behavioral health. And it requires ongoing professional development on what that means, because trauma-informed care is critical now more than ever. Our students need so much more than they did before the pandemic. And that not only includes instruction that is relevant to their needs, it doesn't limit itself to meeting special education needs or bilingual education needs or English learning needs. It's so much more. We have to make sure that our students are ready for work. We have to make sure that they have exposure to executive functions, those things like working memory, cognitive development, inhibitory control, impulse control, if you want to call it more simply. We have to ensure that they have exposure to their passions, the things that they're great at, which may not be the things we're testing, but they're the things that they were born to do. And we have to ensure they have access to being successful and recognized for those things each and every day at school. And that requires supporting our teachers. And it requires providing those resources and partnering with individuals, companies, entities that can help us with those resources and those processes. And so, again, your input and your feedback, I need parents to be part of PACs. I need you to be engaged in the PAC process. I need you to engage in how we allocate the funds that we use to support our students. And I need you to constantly provide us with feedback on how we're doing so that we can continue to refine that process. So it's not as simple as drafting a plan and implementing it. It is an ongoing process that we will do together as a community with all of the different voices at the table. Así que lo que acabo de decirles es que para implementar un sistema seguro, riguroso, innovativo de educación para nuestros estudiantes, para mí es muy importante. Y empieza con colaboraciones. Empieza con tener todas las personas que pueden contribuir en la mesa. Nuestro jefe de policía, jefe de bomberos, nuestros elegidos en la política a nivel estatal, a nivel nacional y a nivel local. Las diferentes organizaciones y entidades que participan en nuestra comunidad. Los padres tienen que ser parte del PAC en las escuelas. Tienen que estar bien informados de todo el proceso educativo, muy informados de cómo se usan los recursos y cómo se desarrolla un presupuesto para la escuela. Y tienen que darlos la mano. Tenemos que hacerlo juntos. No es un proceso de hacer un plan de implementación una sola vez. Es un proceso que hay que refinar todos los días. Y solo se puede hacer si nos comunicamos y si lo hacemos juntos.
Thank you. Our next question. Bridgeport is a broken community that is in dire need of uplifting. How do you plan on building and regaining the trust of the people back?
I don't see a broken community. I see a room full of incredible parents, family members, community members who are here because they care. And because you want to be part of a really critical process in this district. If trust has been broken, I offer my sincerest apologies. And I pledge to ensure that I work hand in hand with you to rebuild it. But that can only happen if we work together and we're all rowing in the same direction. A house divided will not stand. And so we cannot be divided in our efforts to do what's right for kids. We have to agree on what our priorities are. Sometimes we'll have to compromise. We won't all get everything that we want. I won't make everyone happy. There'll be times when you will not be happy with me, and that's okay. It's part of the process. But you will always, always get the truth. You will always get 100% of my effort. You will always have my unwavering commitment to this community. And you will always have me visible and present in every aspect of education in Bridgeport Public Schools. That I can pledge today. No veo una comunidad desunida ni quebrada. Veo un aula llena de personas invertidas en el futuro de Bridgeport. Están aquí para un momento muy importante en la historia de este distrito y están porque les importa. Están porque es importante para ustedes. Si en una ocasión ha habido quiebras en la confianza, les pido disculpas y les garantizo que en el futuro mi prioridad va a ser siempre venir con ustedes con la verdad, pero tenemos que estar unidos. No podemos lograr nada separados. Y es muy importante saber que yo no siempre voy a hacer lo que todo el mundo quiere o lo que va a hacer a todo el mundo feliz. Es imposible para una persona hacer eso. Pero sí voy a tomar decisiones con la recomendación de nuestra junta directiva para el bienestar de todos nuestros estudiantes y para un progreso y un futuro mejor en Bridgeport. Eso se los puedo garantizar esta noche.
Thank you. Our next question. If you are hired, will you live in Bridgeport?
Why would I live anywhere else? This is a beautiful, beautiful city, and it reminds me of home. I grew up in a port town just like Bridgeport, La Chorrera, Panamá, República de Panamá, and I miss it. And this is a spectacular city. My teenager has always attended the schools where I have led, and we've always made sure that she had a public education where mommy worked. So, yes, I am going to live in Bridgeport. And I hope that more people will want to come to live in Bridgeport too. Voy a vivir en Bridgeport. ¿Por qué viviría en otro lugar? Esta ciudad me acuerda a mi niñez. Yo crecí en un pequeño pueblo portero, un pequeño puerto, La Chorrera, en Panamá. Marea Roja, los panameños en la casa. Y les puedo decir que no hay ningún otro lugar donde quisiera vivir que no sea Bridgeport. Mi costumbre siempre ha sido que mi hija atiende las escuelas donde yo trabajo y se educa y vivimos donde yo trabajo. Así que ese es mi plan, estar aquí y ser su vecina. I plan to be your neighbor.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are your plans when it comes to dealing with special education department? How do you plan to make things right with the parents if they come to you with concerns?
Special education is at a crisis at the national level. We don't have enough people graduating and certifying in special education. That's priority number one. We need more individuals to take up the call to teach our students with individual learning differences and people that are passionate about it and love it. I have children in my own family with learning disabilities, and special education is a priority for me. There's nothing greater than having the peace of mind of knowing that you're sending your child to the best possible place where they'll be cared for, they'll be loved, and they'll be educated. And that's what we want to provide our students in Bridgeport in special education. We want our teachers to have the support and the resources that they need. And we want them to know that we are here for them. There's a huge disproportion in the number of students in special education classrooms compared to the level of support and resources that we're providing them. And that is something that we have to make right. Not because it's the law, because it's the right thing to do. And it's what everybody wants for their own kids. Working with special education is not something that we can snap our fingers and resolve. It requires collaboration. It requires a great deal of strategic planning. It requires effective recruitment and retention of our special education teachers. And it requires transparency so that our parents don't feel that we're trying to keep things from them with our special education programs. And I say that because that's happening at the national level. It's not a Bridgeport issue. There are many Bridgeports. So just know that special education is one of my priorities, and I will be working with our board and our staff to ensure that we're serving our students effectively and according to FAPE. We're going to provide FAPE. Educación especial es un tema difícil porque a nivel nacional hay una crisis con educación especial. No hay suficientes maestros, docentes, personas certificadas para servir las necesidades de todos los estudiantes que tienen diferentes niveles de aprendizaje y tipos de aprendizaje. Y yo sé que en esta ciudad no es distinto, también tenemos los mismos retos. Es importante colaborar, analizar, apoyar a los maestros, reclutamiento, retención, transparencia, que los papás sientan que se les está dando comunicación sobre sus estudiantes y que sientan que cada vez que salen de la casa para la escuela, lo están haciendo para ir a un lugar donde se les quiere, donde se les va a tratar bien, donde se les va a educar al nivel que cada uno necesita y más.
Thank you. The next question is, what kind of services can be provided to help autistic children that are in general education and not confined to special education?
Thank you. And I have to say that begins with how we provide professional development for all of our staff. Autism is challenging and it looks so different across the spectrum. It's not a one size fits all. And we have to understand that about autism. We have to understand how to meet student needs better. And we have to understand that in addition to professional development, ongoing support, coaching is critical to making it successful. Students require care every single day. Autistic students, because of their specific challenges, require additional care in the way that we interact with them, in the way that we provide them with opportunities to be included, opportunities to communicate and engage, and opportunities to be part of the learning process, just like everyone else. So autism is a word. Our actions are the solution. Estudiantes con autismo necesitan mucho apoyo, necesitan maestros equipados, maestros que se sienten apoyados y que tienen apoyo continuo, no solamente de un solo entrenamiento, pero apoyo continuo. Las familias también. Los estudiantes van a tener retos y para eso les hace falta que les demos mucha exposición al salón, al aula de clase regular, donde puedan interactuar con los demás estudiantes día a día, educando a los estudiantes y a los maestros a cómo apoyar a los estudiantes con autismo. Es un proceso difícil, y lo sé, pero es un proceso que podemos lograr. El autismo es una palabra, pero la solución para estudiantes con autismo son las acciones que tomemos nosotros como los educadores y los padres.
Thank you. Do you believe that kindergarten and first grade students are the foundation of our school community? If your answer is yes, what assurance do you believe to provide K and first grade teachers to help them achieve growth necessary to get students ready for second grade, third grade reading comprehension and get our students on level?
I believe pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and first grade are the foundation to a successful education. Without those three experiences, commencement and pomp and circumstance doesn't happen. Those experiences are so critical that I will go as far as to tell you that research shows that our students need exposure and the opportunity to develop, first of all, their executive functions early on. Brain science is real. Working memory, cognitive development, inhibitory control, they start in pre-kindergarten. They start even before. And that sets the pathway for our students to be successful in anything that they want to do, to be successful in school and eventually the workplace. Students who do not have opportunities for early learning, research tells us they even struggle as adults in their chosen fields of work. So it's that critical that we prioritize early learning for our students, that we provide the necessary resources, and that we invest in early learning for all of our students. It's that critical. So do I believe in it? Absolutely. Am I devoted to making sure it's successful? Absolutely. Pre-kinder, kinder y primer grado son muy importantes, son integrales para el éxito de nuestros estudiantes. Sin esos grados no hay graduación. No hay carreras futuras. La manera que empezamos dicta cómo nuestra vida progresa. Y un buen empiezo para nuestros estudiantes es crítico. Desarrollar su memoria, desarrollar sus cerebritos chiquititos, desarrollar su aprendizaje, desarrollar la manera que pueden manejar los impulsos, su comportamiento. Todo eso los va a llevar a tener éxito cuando sean adultos en su carrera de escogencia. Pero empieza en los grados tempranos y empieza ya. Para mí es una prioridad número 1.
Thank you. The next question is, given the gross, and then they put in parentheses, in all sense of the word, in historically underfunded district that our underfunded district has experienced, what are the terms in the terms of per pupil expenditure, what innovative ideas do you have to help secure funding and ensure it's allocated in an equitable manner across the district?
Okay, so let's start by talking about what equity is and what it isn't. Equity is not equal. Equity is providing every student with what they need to be successful. That's equity. So when we're talking about per pupil spending, we need to look at the big picture. We need to look at exactly what it is that our students need in Bridgeport in order to be successful. What is it that we need to level the playing field for all of our kids? Does that begin with early childhood? Does that begin with early intervention? Are we providing opportunities to ensure that gaps don't develop, forget closing them, that they don't develop? Are we providing opportunities for our students to have rich, diverse experiences with learning? Are we providing opportunities for them to be successful in their learning in ways other than the ways that we grade and test? All of those pieces are critical when we talk about equity and when we talk about funding. And as the superintendent of Bridgeport, I will definitely ensure that we are functioning from the standpoint of being equitable in the decisions that we make, in the programs that we implement, how we monitor their success, and how we adjust when we see that they're not being successful. La equidad es la primera parte de la conversación. Equidad no significa que todo el mundo recibe lo mismo. Significa que los estudiantes tienen los recursos que son necesarios para tener éxito, individualmente. Y cuando miramos un presupuesto y planeamos cómo se va a planear cada dólar que se gasta, hay que mirar la necesidad individual de todos los estudiantes en el distrito, alinear los programas que ofrecemos con esas necesidades, alinear acceso a esos programas, educación temprana y también alinear cómo decidimos si programas pueden continuar o no continúan si no tienen éxito. No queremos seguir el caminito malo si sabemos que no nos va a llevar a la puerta. So for me, what I just said is we don't want to follow a path that we know is not going to lead us to a door. If we're going to be equitable, we have to ensure that all of our efforts go towards strategically planning programs that not only provide for the individual needs of all of our students, but also lead them to the door. Thank you.
Our next question is, knowing our district has considerable challenges when it comes to hiring and retaining certified teachers, what measures will you take so that all hires, regardless of no voice, I'm assuming, or no veteran, I'm not sure what they meant by that, see the endless opportunities for educational impact and professional growth? How will you personally improve working conditions for professionals in our schools?
Thank you for the question. So there were several questions there. And I will attempt to answer those all.
I'll come back if you need me to remind you of the next one.
Well, read that one more time for me.
Okay. Knowing that our district has considerable challenge when it comes to hiring and retaining certified teachers, what measures will you take so that all hires see the endless opportunities for educational impact and professional growth? That's one. You want to answer that one first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll take that one. Okay. Recruitment and retention is the lifeblood of any school district. Turnover equals low student outcomes. And so we want to make sure that we are able to not be a training ground that passes teachers on to the next district. And that means that our culture and climate, our support and our resources have to meet the needs of our teachers. They have to be aligned with the students that they face each and every day. And they have to be aligned with the families that have high expectations for their students. That is something that I can give you a singular answer for tonight, because that's a process. That's going to require me to analyze what has happened here in the past, the good of it, and what needs to be improved. But I can tell you that it's really important to me to have teacher voice at the table. I can't act upon or enact changes that affect teachers without teacher voice. Next part.
The next part of that question is, how will you personally improve working conditions for professionals in our schools?
Okay. How will I personally? Well, I can tell you what I personally like to do. I like to be in the trenches with you. I like for you to see me on campus, see my face, have an opportunity to visit with me, talk to me, have access to me. It should not be a surprise to have me return your phone call or your email, or to meet with you if you request for me to meet with you. That shouldn't be a surprise. That should be the norm. I am one of you. I am a resource to you. And my goal is to ensure that I am very well connected with your needs in order to be able to meet them. Working conditions have a lot to do with my knowledge or lack of knowledge of what your needs are. And the best way for me to ensure that you have the best working conditions is to ensure that I am listening, that you are able to share with me your needs, and that we are together, all of us as a team, able to develop the solutions for those needs, that I'm able to access and advocate for those resources at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level, that I am able to leverage all of our partnerships, able to leverage all of the nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations that we have available, our local universities, the not so local universities. My goal is to be here to work for you and to meet your needs. Is there more?
No, that is it for that question. So I'll go back to the bucket of questions that we have. How will you help to promote consistent efforts that invite parent and community voice? Can you give an example of a past initiative that you did this on?
Okay. There's a saying that says that when you build it, they will come. But I will challenge you that in the 21st century, sometimes you can't build it. Sometimes you have to use Facebook and Twitter, right? Instagram. I'm okay with those. I don't have a problem using those at all. But I think it's really, really important to ensure that people get access to information. And if that means that we hold small group meetings, coffee with the superintendent, or town hall meetings like this one, if that's what works, great. If it means that we have a day, bring your parent to school day, the superintendent will be on hand, and we will have a series of things that we've done before, that I've done before in my own practice, sessions with the superintendent throughout the course of that school day, and bring your parent to school day. That's what I'll do. I will tailor my practice to meet the needs of this community. And I have been an educator for over 26 years. So communicating with parents is something I'm really good at. Really good. I enjoy it. I like learning about your needs, your dreams for your kids, sharing my dreams for mine, and seeing how we can pull all of the resources in this great city to make that happen. So as we move forward in this process of getting to know one another, please know that you'll see me a lot. You'll probably say, oh my God, she's on Twitter again. And I probably will be, and it's okay. But if you're receiving the information, that's what matters to me. Informar a los padres para mí es muy importante. Esa relación entre los padres y los educadores es única. Compartir con ustedes todo lo que quieren realizar para sus hijos es lo más importante para mí. Y si tengo que hacerlo usando Facebook o Twitter o Instagram, está bien. Si es un cafecito conmigo, también. Yo voy a hacer lo que sea necesario para mantener las líneas de comunicación abiertas siempre con los papás. Sea un día en la escuela donde van con sus hijos a pasar el día en la escuela y tener sesiones conmigo, sea otra clase de oportunidad para comunicar. Lo más importante es que ustedes siempre estén informados, ya sea que se cansen de verme en Twitter, que siempre se mantengan informados de todo lo que está pasando con sus hijos y en las escuelas de Bridgeport.
Thank you. Our next question is, okay, you can talk. Our next question is, what experience do you have with working with central office leadership positions in a large school district? I'm gonna reread that. What experience do you have working in central office leadership position in a large school district? There you go.
Okay. I have been an assistant superintendent in one of the 8th largest school district in the state of Texas for 6 years. Our school district, the current school district that I work in, has 80,000 students, over 85 facilities that are actually instructional facilities. And we are predominantly Hispanic, African American, Asian, and that has been a transition of about 20 years, the change in demographics in the district. When I began working in that district 30 years ago, okay, I want to date myself, it looked very different. I was one of 3 African American individuals on my campus teaching. So it looks very different today than it did then. And what I can say about my experience is that it grows every day. My interactions and engagement with parents and students, I learn from that every day. I haven't stopped learning because I've been doing this longer than some of you have been alive. Okay, I have to learn every day in order to continue to do this work meaningfully and successfully. I have to be able to meet the needs of 21st century students who seem to have been born plugged into a USB port. So learning and growing is part of my personal philosophy. I wouldn't expect any less of any leader. Navigating the politics of working in a large and diverse school district is something else that I've had to do every single day. And I take a great deal of satisfaction in knowing that I give it my best every single day to ensure that people understand cultural relevance, equity, racial disparities, disproportionality, and all of the challenges that 21st century students face. That is something that I am very willing and happy to bring to Bridgeport as your new superintendent.
Thank you. The next question is, I would like to know, how are class sizes functional and self-contained when staff to student ratio is not enough?
Staff to student ratios are always where the rubber meets the road. Always. Because funding is where the rubber meets the road, right? And so we have to continue to be proactive in our planning, proactive in our fiscal planning, proactive in our recruitment, proactive in the development of the people that are here right now. Keeping them, making sure they want to be here with us. Proactive in ensuring that everyone in this community understands the vision for Bridgeport that goes so far beyond just the school district. Is a vision for a way of life for everyone in this community. Living together, working together, learning together. And it's a vision for the generation that will follow. And I want to ensure that as we work through that process, that you are absolutely committed to ensuring that we're working as a team, despite any differences that we may have, because there are always going to be differences. We're individuals. You were not raised by Elena Maria Levy David Samaniego. It's okay. I get it, but I was. And so that means that there's certain things that I will do differently than you do. But I hope to be able to communicate those things so that they're not strange or alien to you. And that's what I want us as a community to do. Communicate our differences, learn from each other so that they're not strange or alien. And despite having had different mothers, we can all understand one another.
Thank you. The next question is, in Bridgeport, some parents/guardians are classified as aggressive when they're advocating for their child. What can we do to let students and parents know it's okay to advocate for yourself and your child? How can we teach them to advocate?
Well, I'm not going to call the police on you. Okay, because I know sometimes when parents are aggressive, you know, that's something that people use as a strategy. Criminalizing people is not a strategy. Communication is a strategy. I don't get to choose how the communication happens when I'm receiving it. You may be happy. You may be angry at that moment. You may be feeling like I'm not supporting your needs. It is my role as a superintendent to ensure that I listen, first of all, understand where you're coming from, and understand what you're trying to get across to me. And then it's my job to work with you so that we can resolve it. So advocate for your children loudly, quietly, actively, excitedly, angrily if necessary, if I'm not listening. But advocate, please, because their future depends on it. La comunicación, cuando se recibe, no se puede controlar como se recibe. Hay veces que percibimos que los papás están enojados, que nos están amenazando, que vienen y están formando alboroto. La responsabilidad de cada padre es sus hijos. Mi responsabilidad es escuchar, entender, comprender y ayudar a resolver. Así que vengan contentos, vengan enojados. Lo importante es que vengan y que sí den la cara por sus hijos y nos den la oportunidad de trabajar juntos para resolver cualquier problema.
Thank you. The next question is, as a superintendent, are you willing to help locate funds to go to Bridgeport families with school-aged children for shelter costs, food, and other needs for children during the summer months when there isn't any school?
Absolutely. It's a priority for me to ensure that we don't lose any kid. One of the most disappointing things for me is to start a school year and to have kids not come back and to not know what happened to them. Where did those kids go? What happened? Especially for our students who are experiencing homelessness, or our students who are here for asylum, or are living in a shared housing. It's really critical that we know every step of the way. That's why we have social workers. That's why we have professionals and agencies to help us. And it's on us to maximize those resources to ensure that we don't lose a single kid and that they have resources, free meals in the summers, a safe place every single day, the ability to further their education during the summer months for those that may have learning gaps because their living experience is unstable. All of those pieces are critical. And so that is a priority for me. That was the question, correct?
Yes.
And it is something, I talk a lot, and it is something that I definitely see as a focus, making sure that we don't lose any of our kids. So please know that that is a priority. And if there's one thing that we're entitled to, the minute that we're born is an education. Where we do or don't live should not be a barrier to that.
Thank you. So the time is 7:45. I'm going to reread the remaining questions that are here at my table. And then around 8, we'll summarize it up, and that'll be it for our candidate. So here's another question. How will you help many students who have been bullied on a daily basis within their schools and at the same time come from homes where they're not supported for such reasons, which cause them to shut down and become the bullies?
This is why social emotional learning is more critical now than it ever has been. We cannot turn a blind eye to the fact that we don't all have children who make good choices, right? We don't all have kids who understand compassion, empathy, and why it's critical to those around them. But we all aspire to have those kids. We all want kids who are kind to one another. And we have to be able to make that a part of our curriculum and a part of instruction, a part of our district culture, a part of how we hold each other accountable every single day in the classroom and in our community in order to ensure that it doesn't spill into our classrooms. So I can tell you that bullying does have a solution. There are effective strategies that we can implement to minimize bullying. Can we outright prevent it from happening? I sure wish we could. If I had that power. But in lieu of that power, my superpower is ensuring that everyone in the district is empowered to know how to properly address bullying, both for the victim and the bully. The bully also needs support. They need social emotional development. They need resources in order for them to learn that empathy, that compassion, that kindness, or even that pause before taking an action that will be regrettable. That inhibitory control that I was talking about earlier, that impulse control that is so critical for our kids to master from the time they're 3. So that is a priority for me. And I can assure you that as your superintendent, it is something that we will definitely have in the district as one of the tenets. How do we protect one another? How do we look out for one another? How do we advocate effectively when we see someone being bullied? How do we share that information and feel safe? Because sometimes we don't feel safe telling, right? And it's not just the job of the school district. I want everyone in our community to be empowered to address it when it happens. I want our kids to be able to call it out when they see it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you plan to recruit and increase teachers of color / minorities?
Well, it seems like that would be a simple answer, but it isn't. It is not as simple as saying, I'm going to go visit every HBCU in the US and they will come, right? Or everyone would do it. It takes more than that. Why would someone want to come to Bridgeport? That's the first question we have to answer. And we all have to be in alignment about the answer, the why. And how are we going to nurture, support, and ensure that they want to stay? That's my job as your superintendent, to ensure that I have the answers to that. And there are lots of strategies that I could list and rattle off, but I know you're not here to hear me list strategies. It's really critical to ensure that students have teachers and staff that they can culturally identify with. I was not raised in a generation where that was the case. And yet I thrived. We want our kids to thrive because, not despite of. That is the most powerful message that we can send to our teachers of color. We want our kids to thrive because, not despite of. And we can't expect someone else later down the line to be the person that brings the solution. We are the solution right now. And so recruitment of people of color, yes, It needs to happen. But I want to recruit teachers that love kids. That's my priority. I want people who love kids, no matter what they look like. If you love kids, we already have something in common. And it doesn't matter to me what you look like, as long as you love kids and you're going to be fair and you're going to be equitable and you're going to be caring and compassionate and do your best by them. I would love to have teachers that look like the rainbow. I would. But I'm also living with the reality that increasingly people are choosing careers other than education. So the recruitment and retention is critical, but the recruitment and retention of the right people is even more critical. And we have to ensure that Bridgeport is a place where people want to raise their families, where they want to work, they want to live, and they want to stay. And we want to ensure that we begin that process today.
All right, I have two more questions for you. And I just for those that just saw me receive a card, a parent was translating their card from Portuguese to English. So I want to make sure we do allow it because she did bring it in, but translation was needed. So for respect of that parent, right before we finish the last two questions, I'm going to read this one for you. We are a district that pilots many programs which ultimately may not serve our student population, especially at schools with high ML and SPED populations, and sees frequent turnover in terms of programming regarding literacy and mathematic instructions, especially with K through 8. How will you help promote scientifically research-based curriculum programs that is appropriate for all students, perhaps without overhauling what we already have in place? That was a loaded question, but
it's a great question.
It's a good one.
So, and I want to make sure that I'm giving this question justice because it's a great question. I have to begin by saying that an initiative is not a program, and a program is not instruction. An initiative is not a program. It's a first step to doing something. And a program, which is a way of doing something, is not instruction. So we first have to understand what it is that we want. We can have initiatives every day. That is not going to benefit our students. We have to carefully vet and analyze anything that we're going to put in front of students and anything that our teachers are going to be charged with mastering and teaching. And in that process, we have to have voices at the table. One of the things that I think we've done really successfully in my current district is bringing many voices to the table when we have RFP processes, when we're vetting resources for implementation with children. We want to hear from teachers, from parents, from leaders, from community members. We want to hear from you because ultimately we are using these communal resources for those programs. And we don't want to find out 3 years down the road that it didn't work, or that we're unhappy, or that it was the wrong program, or that it didn't address this part of the data, or that we didn't look at it carefully enough, or that it left the niños bilingües behind. We don't want to find out 3 years from now. We want to find out right now while we're looking at it. And that's why that transparency is so critical, and including and having different people at the table is so critical when we're vetting and selecting the resources that we're going to provide our students and our leaders in Bridgeport. So please know that I am not an initiative-driven superintendent. It's not my thing. Maybe it's somebody else's, and that's okay. I don't judge. But I really prefer to carefully analyze, research, and vet anything that we're going to put in front of our students, just like I do with my own daughter. And just like I wouldn't impulsively select something for her, I promise not to do that for your students either.
Thank you. Our last question, and I'm going to do my best to understand how this could fit for you, but I will ask it. How is the English language teaching program for immigrant parents? Will they be kept in their integrity?
Okay,
Right.
so what I'm gathering from that is that there's either a program that provides adult education for foreign language speakers and that we want to preserve it, correct? Am I capturing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so if that is a program that we have here in Bridgeport, trust me, that's a program I want to have in Bridgeport. We need to ensure that parents have access to learning English and not to the detriment of their own language. Not to the detriment of their own language or their culture or their beliefs and values, but as a resource for them to help their children be successful, which is the difference. And I'll give you an example. My great-grandfather, who went to Panama from Jamaica, never learned to speak Spanish. As his great-granddaughter, prior to coming to the US, I never learned to speak English. Because the process of acculturation when you're a foreigner is that strong. You want your children to be successful, and so you don't allow them to speak the native language at home because you want them to be successful in school, right? Well, I'm here to tell you, you really shouldn't do that. In order for a person to be whole, they have to know, love, and value and understand all parts of themselves. You're a part of your kids. Your story, your language, your culture, your background, it's all part of who they are. And you don't want them to function as part of a person. You want them to function as a whole person, understanding their culture, understanding the language, understanding the beliefs and practices. My grandmother used to go in the backyard if I got a fever, and she knew exactly which grass to cut and boil to make a tea to bring that fever down. I don't know how to do that for my daughter. And I think that's a tragedy. So there are valuable pieces in everyone's cultural heritage that we need to preserve, protect, and promote. Part of a community. The community is diverse. Everyone's culture is beautiful, and we can learn from it. Had someone helped to preserve my grandmother's, I would know what grass to cut for my kid. But I don't. So please understand, and I know I say that jokingly, but it's really true. There are certain cultural practices that are integral to our kids understanding where they come from and how they fit into this world that becomes more and more complicated every single day. Let's not make it harder by denying their parents access to English. So we will make sure that for those that want adult education in English, that it's provided in Bridgeport. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was cute. Oh my gosh,
So at this moment, we have a small break between this particular session. We'll start back again at 8:15 with the second candidate. I asked you to please not leave, please stay so that you can hear the next candidate. And there will also be a survey for anyone that's here so you can talk about your experience today, and that will be for both candidates as well. All right, if you can all put your hands together for our second candidate, Miss Alicia Perrin. So again, I'll take a moment for anyone who has questions. Are there any new questions? Okay. All right, Ms. Perrin, we will start the process as we've done in the past. You have a couple minutes. If you can just give us a summary of who you are and what you would like us to know about you today, and then we'll start the questions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alicia Perrin. And I want to first off start off by saying that we live in a society where it's unfortunate that narratives get taken out of context and reign supreme. But I'm here to talk to you about some facts that I want you all to be aware of. I am a Bridgeport Public School student of 13 years. I'm a Bridgeport Public School parent of 13 years. I'm a Bridgeport resident of almost 44 years. And I am an educator for over 20 years here in the city of Bridgeport. During my time here, the only thing that has been my main concern is providing and moving the needle for education for our students. And I've done that each and every day, going into different schools. During my time as a 7th and 8th grade ELA teacher, when I was an interim special education teacher here in the city, as an assistant principal, and now interim superintendent of Bridgeport Public Schools. I went to our schools, the same schools that I walk through each and every day and see students. I started off my career as a student here at Howland School. I then went on to Park City Magnet, and I graduated from Central Magnet in the top 2% of my class. During that time, I was also actively involved in the landscape of education. I worked with the Lighthouse program starting at age 16 under the auspices of Tammy Papa. I worked alongside of Ms. Jetty Tisdale at the former Longfellow School. And then I went on to become a site coordinator at Blackham School, where I taught as well. I was named Who's Who among high school students for 3 years of my career. I also was part of the initiating class at Central High School when we became inducted into the National Honor Society in grade 10, and usually was done in the 11th grade year. My whole time here has been dedicated to education, whether it be mine or someone else's. I also served on a community forum as part of representatives for students for the city of Bridgeport with Dr. Theodore Sergi, who was then the Commissioner of Education, where I went every month to have conversations with students around the state about the education that we were receiving as teenagers. So my plight here is long. I am a resident. I live in Bridgeport. Today, I don't come to Bridgeport. I live here each and every day. And I am proud to say that Bridgeport helped me become who I am today.
Thank you. So just want to remind again, for those that need Spanish translation, it is available and there are staff that can help you. Our first question, as the current interim of the superintendent of Bridgeport Public Schools, can you talk about the 3 areas of needed improvement in the past year and how would you plan to build on this?
So there are several areas of needed improvement, but one of the first things that I think about overall is the educational experience for all students. We have to address teaching and learning through the equity lens for all of our students. So those students who are identified for special education, our EL learners, as well as all of our other students. We look at Tier 1 instruction, and we often have conversations about what's lacking and how are we utilizing the resources that we have. So we start off having conversations about how we can leverage the resources that we do have to make a greater impact. So the first thought is looking at our time, looking at our bell schedules to be able to maximize instructional time for all of our students. How are we using our current schedule to be able to have our interventionists in the classroom, for those of us who are lucky enough to have those, our special education teachers, our EL teachers, all to be able to engage in the instructional process. We look at that there is a lack of systematic approaches across the district from K to 12 that talks about expectations for students and for our adult learners. So we look at what we need to do in regards to that. So putting common assessments in place, looking at that we are now moving toward a data-informed instruction that we can look at least 3 times a year to make sure that each and every leader in the building, each and everyone understands what that process is so that we are able to move the needle. We haven't been doing that. We haven't done that probably since about 2017. Overall, the whole entire district, we have not had a district strategic plan in place in Bridgeport Public Schools since 2020. The last one that was created began in 2017. So that is one of the very first steps that we have to make. And that will be the overarching umbrella that we will use to be able to make decisions. Special education is definitely one. Tier 1 instruction is another, as well as our EL learners. And that also comes with the professional development that we have to provide to our staff to be able to meet the needs of our students. I said, when I look at our staff, we have great staff in the city of Bridgeport, whether they're teachers, whether they're paraprofessionals or security guards, and they are here because they choose to be here. When we look at that, 47% of our teaching staff have been here for 10 or more years. We have 71% of our administrators who have been here for 10 or more years. Our clerical staff, 74%. I said, and our security staff are at 47%. So that shows that they want to be here and they want to help impact what's going on. But we need to look at the professional learning opportunities that they have to be able to do the work. Our population is ever changing. I said, and with that being said, we have to be able to speak to those needs for our learners as well as our staff to be able to support those needs as well.
Thank you. The next question is, can you explain to the community why you applied for this position of education within leadership in our district? I feel your answer is important for Bridgeport residents to hear. Why did you apply for this position?
It's very simple. I am Bridgeport. I was born here. I didn't come here. And when I go out into the community, when I'm at the grocery store, when I'm at the park, everywhere I go, I see students, I see parents, I see someone who recognizes me, even if I don't want to be recognized. There's somebody who's there who says, is that Miss Perrin? Oh, she's from Dunbar. I went to a school just on Monday, and it was one of my old students sitting there. He asked me about his teacher, Miss Cordero. He said, how is she doing? You give her a hug for me. I miss her. And everywhere I go, I get that love. And it's not love because of who I am. It's love because of what the work that I'm doing here. It's really easy to be able to walk away because it's hard. There's nothing easy about the work that we do here. All the educators that come in every single day looking at the lack of resources that we've had for years and years and years that we currently have. I read a quote from the late Geraldine Johnson when she sat in the seat back in 1986, and she said that we have been chronically underfunded and our students at Bridgeport still don't get what we need. And that was in 1986. And here we are in almost 2024 having the same exact conversation about not investing in our most valuable resource, which is our children and our people. So I decided that I would take a bet on me. I would take a bet on Bridgeport because Bridgeport helped raise me. So why would I not want to be able to uplift our students and be able to do the work here? Why not want to lead the district? Why not want to lead the city in which I live? Yes, I could go somewhere else. There's been opportunities to go somewhere else. But for 20 plus years, I've been here. And I plan on staying here as long as I will be allowed to stay here. Because it's extremely important that students who are in our classrooms each and every day are able to know that people from Bridgeport do great things too, that people from Bridgeport care about the students here and the community. It's not about coming in for a year or two to be able to make an impact. It's about making lifelong impacts. impacts. I want those same students who are sitting in classrooms today to come back in 20 years and say, I want to give back to my community because of something you said or something you did or something that you created that allowed us to be able to grow. That is what it's all about. It is not about coming in for a few minutes and getting everyone excited and leaving when opportunities present themselves, because they will. So we want to be able to have conversations. So when I go back to Dunbar School, when I go back to other schools, when I'm at that grocery store or at Seaside Park walking and people come up to me, I want them to understand you're going to see me because this is my community.
Given the gross in all aspects of the word gross and historically underfunding that our district has experienced in terms of per pupil expenditure, what innovative ideas do you have to help secure funding and ensure it's allocated in an equitable manner across the district?
So one of the things to do as far as that resource allocation is really starting to understand how our monies are being spent every single day. I think part of the issue that we have here in the district is that there's a monopoly. There's only really one or two people who currently understand how monies are being spent. So having more transparency about what that is, having conversations and mandating regular reports about what's being spent, how it's being spent, and how those decisions are being made and made at the level with those of us who are making decisions to be able to see the outcomes in the classroom. Aside from that, making sure that the constituents understand what it means for children every single day in a classroom. We have budget forms and we talk about, how much money we need. We talked about, that 26.5 or 27, like I said, that we needed this year to be able to have everything that we needed. We asked for 12.4 million from the city. We got 2.5. So making sure that people understand what we're asking for and how it's being used. I think there is a misnomer out there that we have this pot of money that we're sitting on and that we can always dig and find it. But the truth is we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, as my mother would say. So we need to really be able to look at that and understand it. So part of that is having standing agenda items on our board meetings that talk about resource allocation, where we are in major buckets like teaching and learning, like SEL, like teacher recruitment and professional development, parental engagement. So we know what we're spending, how we're spending it, and what adjustment that we need to make if we need to do so to be able to address our needs. We need to also make sure that we're having regular communications with our legislative bodies about how it's being impacted, because I think oftentimes that is not understood either. So we have to have common language around who we're investing in, which are our children. I said, because we need them to be able to support the work here in Bridgeport Public Schools. We also need to be able to find ways to look at legislation and be kept up to date on that. So one of those things that we can do is engage in an RFP process so that we can get someone who's working at that legislative place to be able to bring those updates back to us and communicate so everyone understands what that means. It's extremely important to have that transparency. It's extremely important to have that knowledge, because without it, someone can tell you anything and you're left to believe it. So you have to be able to understand that. I said, even for myself, I've already enrolled in a budget finance school class because I need to learn more about it. And I can't rely on what somebody else tells me. So it's extremely important to be able to invest in yourself by getting the knowledge that you need. And I think by doing that, you'll be able to create some transparency about what we need and why we need it. I think parents and students also need to become part of the conversation so that they understand that when we don't get that $20 million or whatever it happens to be, what that's going to look like in their classroom. Is that going to be, an art teacher that's going to be removed? Is that going to be a social worker that will no longer be there? Will we no longer have interventionists? Will their assistant principal become part-time? So we lose these valuable resources that we know are essential to be able to move the needle forward, but also provide the basic services that our students deserve.
Thank you. The next question is, do you believe that kindergarten and first grade students are the foundation of our school community? This is a loaded question. If the answer is yes, what assistance would you provide for K and first grade teachers to help them achieve the growth necessary to get students ready for second grade and third grade reading comprehension and get our students on level early?
So the first part of that question was asking about whether I believed whether K and 1 students are the foundation for the work that we have to do. So that is a loaded question because we do have to provide some foundational skills for those students. We need our students to, when they exit K and 1, to be able to identify letters and sounds, to be able to identify sight words so that they have the foundational skills for reading. As well, we know that numeracy is a literacy as well. So they need to be able to do that work. So it's extremely important, but it's not the only thing that's important. We need to be able to also look at our students who are transitioning from middle school into high school. When we look at the current data, we're looking at students who are off track for graduation in 9th grade. And right now that data looks like about 40%. So that tells me something, that there's something wrong and there's a huge disconnect at the high school level. Some of that comes through assessment data, that they're not aligned. Some of that comes with a lack of looking at data and using it to inform instruction. Some of that comes with professional learners who don't have the capacity to do that work. So how do we support it? But it also comes with the fact that we need to be able to provide pathways at the high school level as it relates to social services. So students will know that aside from receiving that diploma at the end of grade 12, that they will also have a skill that they can go out and work within the community to be able to earn an income and use that to be able to grow themselves. I said, so it is a loaded question in that. If I go back to what you originally asked, Ms. Brown, you asked about how we support our K and 1 teachers. So one of the things that we need to be able to do is make sure that they have a strong foundation for the literacy and numeracy skills that need to be taught at that grade level. So by providing those supports. So right now we have something called a DIBELS expert in every school. And for those of you who are not familiar with that terminology, DIBELS is our K-3 assessment that we use to be able to determine where students are reading. All right, so we have that now. We also now have engaged in the process of having teacher leaders to be able to support that work. But one of the things that we have not leveraged accordingly is our common planning time to be able to look at that data to make decisions about how that's used and be able to really gather information from our K and 1 teachers about what other supports they need to be able to be successful in that realm. Part of the work that the executive cabinet has been working on, as I mentioned before, is the district strategic plan. And those are to create those through lines from what the decisions that we make at, the top or the district level and how it impacts student outcomes. So with all of that being said, yes, I find it extremely important, but I don't find it the only thing that's important.
Thank you. The next question is, I'm going to read it as it says it on here. I am a student in English language education program for immigrant students. We are currently having a very big conflict because we have to vacate the building we are studying in, where the courses have been taught for over 20 years. You are currently an interim, correct? Knowing all the problems that the immigrants are going through, how can you agree to place students in the building where there are federal agencies, knowing that the majority are undocumented and even living in sanctuary states like Connecticut? This exposure ends up putting us in situations of intimacy and insecurity. In addition to effective reducing the number of immigrants who could benefit from the program, which is aimed at them, as the spaces offered effectively smaller and does not accommodate all the students who are served by this program where I study.
So to address that question as it relates to the adult learning site, we began negotiations prior to me coming into the interim seat to start talking about what that needed to look like for students. And we were not making any progress as far as having those conversations about what was needed. One of the biggest issues with the current site is that it is not ADA compliant, meaning if there is someone who has a physical disability who wants to be able to attend that site, they are unable to do so. As we engage in having conversations about going into new leases, we are charged with making sure that whatever site that we're using is able to accommodate everyone who wants to be able to have access to the program. As I understand it, we are engaged in trying to find a site that will better provide it. And we have located some options. Now, with those options being said, that is one in a building that is newer. It is. It is air conditioned. It is ADA compliant. And it also provides an opportunity for any student who wants to attend. One of the conversations that we have had with some of the board members who have attended the site tour to determine if this is something that we want to go into or do is, how about we creating more sessions that we can make available to all other students who want to come into that site. So it wouldn't be just available at one time, but throughout the day. We also talk about, we know that it's not directly in the neighborhood that we have been accustomed to having for the last 20 years. So how could we accommodate that? So we talked about providing bus passes for our students to be able to have that access. It isn't an easy decision to make, but we also have to look at it from the perspective of what do we need to be able to do so that we're fully compliant with state regulations. And even as we go on and we renovate buildings and we go into new constructions, we are trying to make sure that the decisions that we make are totally aligned with those state regulations. So that way we never have to face that students who want to have access will.
Thank you. What experience do you have working in central office leadership position in a large district like Bridgeport?
Well, for the last 8 months, I have served as the interim superintendent of Bridgeport Public Schools. And I say that because walking into that door back in November, it was overwhelming. And I can tell you that. And I could tell you that because my experience had been building based. Had I served on district committees? Absolutely, under previous superintendents. Have I had conversations and worked on the district literacy team with Dr. Jenkins? Yes, I have. Have I worked on the district special education team and had conversations around that? Yes, I have. Have I been part of principal forums throughout the state under a previous assistant superintendent from Bridgeport, the late Dr. Robert Henry? Yes, I have. Have I gone on educational experiences outside of the United States with other professionals to Finland with some people from Bridgeport? I've gone to Dubai with other educators. I've gone to Canada with other educators. So no, my view has not been sitting in the seat of a superintendent aside from this interim superintendentship that I have been sitting in for the last 8 months. But my experiences are vast because I believe in building my own capacity and investing in my knowledge to be able to do the work. Because I knew at some point in time that I would want to step outside of the building to be able to do district level work. This opportunity happened to present itself, and I bet on myself, I put myself out there, and I happened to be selected.
Thank you. The next question is, in Bridgeport, some parents/guardians are classified as aggressive when it comes to advocating for their child. What can we do to let students and parents know that it's okay to advocate for yourself and your child? How can you teach them to advocate?
So I think that is common, but I think people get confused by the term aggressive. Because someone speaks loudly or passionately doesn't necessarily make them aggressive. Oftentimes people are not heard unless they get louder. So they feel like the need to do so. So one of the ways to be able to do that is really creating opportunities to be able to express themselves. So I think that transparency comes into play with that. And one of the things that we can absolutely leverage is our district website. So one of the things that I know that I have had very difficulty with is maneuvering it. And creating a forward-facing district website that is specific to parents. So that way, if they need information, they will have access to it, because I think that's part of the issue. Knowing who to go to for what needs to be clarified as well. So also leveraging our social media posts. So making sure that we're doing that. leveraging our school-based websites as well, because each school does have a web page. So making sure that they are mimicking and making sure parents are aware of how to access that information. The newsletters that are being presented through school staff also can talk about those things, and making sure that parents have a voice. So that has to come, so that we're able to come together and have more communication about what that looks like. Oftentimes when I engage a parent, they are calling about a complaint. It's not just how are you today? So having opportunities for them to be able to come and just talk about the education, I think is extremely important. I know that Mr. Benahan wanted to engage in the parent convention this year, but we were unable to do so because of monetary restraints, but also creating opportunities like that more than once a year so parents do have the opportunity to have conversations. Right now, we do have our parent roundtables, and they are focused around certain topics, but making sure that there's time that's built in just for people to talk to myself as well as cabinet staff, and making sure that at the school level that there are more workshops and times available for parents to come out. I know that a lot of our parents are working and they're working 1 and 2 jobs to be able to do what they need to do, but trying to leverage the information and the time and resources that we have to make sure that people have that access, I think is extremely important.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you plan to recruit and increase teachers of color/minorities?
So one of the things that we engaged in since I've been interim is we have created a DEIB committee at the district level, which is comprised of individuals from the human resource department as well as administrators and teachers. And I sent these individuals to some professional development from one of our local reps about what that needs to look like. Also, we've engaged in utilizing and purchasing a part of the frontline system where we can actually be able to delineate between the individuals who want to come in and what they stand for. Part of the work that we also need to be able to do is have conversations with our building leaders about what they need, especially at this time of year. There's lots of teachers who leave the district. There's lots of teachers who are trying to come in, and really trying to secure them and being able to lean on the knowledge we have. So I've engaging the human resources into setting up interviews with our building-based administrators to be able to talk about what do you look for in a teacher in grades K to 2, in grades 3 to 5, and 6 to 8. What are some of the practices or instructional practices that you want them to be able to discuss? Social emotionally, how do they build the capacity with relationship building and parental engagement? So those are some of the things that we talk about doing. As far as also retaining those individuals that I talked about, when I look at our numbers and our percentages of individuals who keep on coming back to Bridgeport Public Schools, talking about creating ways for them to be able to develop themselves. So right here in the current structure that we have, of course, our executive cabinet made of your interim superintendent, chief academic officer, and executive directors, as well as your deputy superintendent. And then you have department heads across the district as far as social work, psychology, and so forth. And then you go down and you go to the buildings. So you have your principals, your assistant principals, and in some buildings you have deans. But there is no opportunities currently that allow people, say teachers, who want to go into administration to be able to build their capacity and see if this is something they really want to do. So being able to create those opportunities for them. So I know some of the work that we've done in regards to special education, we have built some of those things in this year with IEP compliance officers, special education coach, and an inclusion coach to see how that's going to be. Also with the resurgence of district data teams, and district level teams, as far as special education teams, as far as professional development teams, social emotional teams, so that we can give our emerging teachers as well as current administrators an opportunity to be able to show their level of expertise and really show, what they can help bring to the district. One of our previous superintendents used to always say that the wisdom comes from within. And I believe that to be true, because when you think about everyone who comes in and the number of years that they've had in their levels of expertise, they will be able to support the work if we create an opportunity for them to do so. And right now, we haven't done that. So those are some of the opportunities that we're going to take advantage of to be able to build the capacity to retain teachers. When it comes down to recruiting, I'm all about getting out there. I don't want people sending emails. I want people going there, having conversations about what it means to be in Bridgeport. What do our students need? What do they look like? What do they want? What does it feel like to work in work in the biggest district in the state of Connecticut, but making sure that you have the supports that you need to be successful. I want to create affinity groups for our staff to be able to join in and just have conversations. Nothing that has to do with evaluation, nothing that has to do with anything that you might typically think of when it comes down to education, but a brave place for them to be able to go to and talk about what they need and the supports that they need to get it, and us to utilize that information to be able to determine our next steps.
Thank you. As the superintendent, are you willing to help locate funds to go to Bridgeport families with school-aged children for shelter costs, food, and other needs for children during the summer months when they aren't in school?
Yes, I am willing to do that. I've already started forming relationships with Alliance. Dr. Monet Ferguson has been great having conversations about what are some of the resources out there, and just having conversations with individuals who are in the community who may be more familiar to that than I am, to say this is available. These are things that we can push out. That's part of also the work that we do with our website. I have been speaking to individuals about working on some of the things and providing information about what is available to the office of the superintendent. Oftentimes it goes to other offices and we don't necessarily have access. So when a parent calls us about something, we have to fish for it. So we're trying to establish those relationships to be able to have that information come directly to us in the office of the superintendent so that we can then create that as part of the forward-facing website so people can have access.
Thank you. Bridgeport is a broken community that is in dire need of being uplifted. How do you plan on building and regaining the trust of people Sorry, I'm gonna read that again. Bridgeport is a broken community that is in dire need of being uplifted. How do you plan on building and regaining the trust of the people back?
So I think part of that work really comes with the communications that are put out. So that starts with communications that come through Parent Square for our parents. Those come from communications that go out to BPS team members as far as things that are happening within the community, recognizing how people feel, understanding that we all have a responsibility to the students here, but being able to really say, it's okay to be human. I think a lot of times people forget and they say, you have a title, you're a teacher, you're a this, you're a that. But people don't always take a step back and think about we're human too, and we may need a moment to be able to gather ourselves. So to let people understand, let people know that it's okay to take that moment, to take that time to reset, but also to continue to persevere on the goal and the focus, which is creating better outcomes for students. With parents, I think it's really all about celebrations. It's really all about being transparent, and it's really about having conversations about what is happening. I think people don't know what's happening, and that's where a lot of the miscommunication comes in, where people feel like that there is a lack of trust, and that may not be intentional at all. It may just be how it's presented. It may just be because the information was not available at the time. So really trying to get in front of it and working with building leaders as well as districts to be able to do that. And utilizing our social media. So when we make posts about what's going on, not just activities, but just, how are you feeling today? Check in with us. If you have something you want to share, do that. And I can honestly say that has been a great experience for me in this role, that, just sending out things about information, something as simple as Happy Mother's Day, and then your inbox gets flooded with 900 emails just to say thank you for thinking of us. I think that the human piece is extremely important for all of our stakeholders.
Thank you. The next question is, how will the curriculum be upgraded to meet the needs of our children to become leaders and not followers in today's workforce?
So curriculum, we definitely look at what we have currently in the city of Bridgeport, and we look at legislation that's coming down to be able to make curricular decisions about what is needed. So, for instance, with our high school students, we're working on this summer something called Connecticut Rise. So, Connecticut Rise, we are engaging in going to some professional development about how to strengthen the data collection systems for grades 8 students who are going into grade 9. We're engaging in conversations with individuals from Goodwin University to create common pathways at the comprehensive high schools because a lot of our students are extremely transient and we don't want them to be able to engage in something at a basic and then if they transfer to Harding in the middle of the year or 10th grade not have access to that information. We talk about providing those supports and strengthening the work that we do at the building level with our teacher leaders. So building in time where we're able to have teacher leaders hear from district and content level leaders about the work that we do and making sure that there's time built into school-based schedules so that they can work with teachers because they are an additional support as well. Curriculum, we're really looking at how to use that data and how it informs what we need to do for our next steps. So for instance, one of the things that we've discovered in our K to 3 grades as we look at literacy, we looked at a couple of schools who were piloting a program called ECRI. And we looked at their data as it related to everyone else in the district and how much farther they were ahead. And it was something extremely small that they were doing that impacted the change. So we said, okay, we need to start doing this in greater pockets across our district to be able to see that change. Yes, we are seeing growth. I said, but we need to see more growth. We are not where we need to be at all. And we have to continue to work to do that. We're going into, with grades K to 5, we are utilizing a new science program next year. So that is being leveraged accordingly. We are looking at building a more time for professional learning around numeracy and math because it's extremely important. And we're utilizing our school-based and district-based PD days to be able to do a lot of that work and making sure that it's intentional and making sure that we have certain points throughout the year, we will be progress monitoring how students are doing. I said, and that will determine where we go from there.
Thank you. Our next question is, we love our public schools, but many parents feel that schools spend too much time closed to the community. We've heard for many years that employees of the BOE feel like their voices are silenced. They are afraid to step up. Tell us how you will lead our district towards being an open, honest, and transparent and accountable district. Also, are you someone who lead in the face of political pressure? If so, explain how you'll give concrete. Please explain how and give concrete examples. Loaded question again, so I can start.
Can I look at it if you don't mind? Thank you.
It's a lot in there.
I know, that's why I wanted to look at it, but thank you. So to address the piece about close to the community, I absolutely agree with you. Oftentimes people, school staff are afraid to open the doors to the community. And I think part of the way we can leverage that is through our parent engagement funds. So we have those that have to be spent at the school level every single year. It is a huge focus to be able to work with parents to be able to do that. So making sure that as part of that work, the community can be invited to those events and be part of that work. Opening up for volunteers to be a part of the work that we do in schools. I know that in previous years, we did have the Parent Center, which we no longer have here in the city of Bridgeport, but who also worked with getting volunteers to come in to do read alouds just to help out in classrooms and be able to support the work of the teachers. So I think that's important. When it comes down to employees, making sure that they feel like they're heard, I think one of the things that has to be established if there is a new BEA president who is there. So make sure establishing a strong relationship with him to be able to speak and advocate for his constituents, but also let them know what's the best way to be able to speak about what their needs are. Since I have been in the seat, I have received several emails and people have asked to speak with me, and I've spoken with quite a few of them about their concerns. One of the things that we also always get approached about is contracts and monies and negotiations in that regard. And some things we can't address and we cannot change. But if people really truly want to be heard, so creating a way for people to be able to share their concerns without a fear. People who know me and who have worked with me understand that I'm very, very direct. I'm about my business, and I'm going to say it is whatever it is, the way it needs to be said to make sure people understand it. But it doesn't mean that I am not going to listen and take into consideration what their needs are. I believe in working together because we're a team. There is nobody who works in this district who can do this work alone. So you have to be able to hear from and the knowledge comes from everyone. It doesn't just come from one because we have lived experiences that we can lean on to be able to help direct us. So I think that's important as well. Can I lead in the face of political pressure? I believe that I can. There's not many things that necessarily scare me. We're going to have to be able to make very, very difficult decisions. This year ends ESSER and ARPA funds that we received at the onset of the pandemic to be able to create essential needs for our students. And with that being said, there's going to have to be some very tough conversations about what we're going to have to keep and what we're not going to be able to keep to be able to provide for our students. So that's extremely important, to be able to come to the table with knowledge, be able to come to the table with logic about what the best next steps are and the why behind it. So that's something that I'm not fearful of. The most difficult decisions are usually those that are the most valuable as they relate to education, as they relate to people. So being able to lead in the face of political pressure is part of the work that we do. You can't get distracted because it's difficult. You have to focus on whether it's worth it.
Thank you. The next question is, we are a school community with 60% Spanish/Latino students. With all due respect, if you don't look for the well-being of parents, how will you say that you will take good care of your children as students with a view to the best of them? So I'm going to try that again.
Thank you.
All right. We are a school community with 60% Spanish and Latino students. With all due respect, if you don't look for the well-being of parents, how can you say that we will take good care of our children as students? I think they mean and students, with a view to the best of them. That's literally what it says.
Well, this is what I'll say, because this is what I'm going to try to make sense of for me. What I believe the communication is trying to say is, how are you going to take care of our students if you don't take care of our parents? And taking care of parents comes in so many ways. But I think that some of those things I've spoken about in regards to being transparent and having opportunities for people to engage in conversations about what it is that they want and need for their children. I think having opportunities to be able to access information, access is huge here in the city of Bridgeport. And yes, 60% of our population is Latino, and that is very, very true. I said, but I also want to focus on the fact that all of our students in the city of Bridgeport need a quality education. And by focusing on creating structures around quality Tier 1 instruction and equitable educational opportunities for all students, we will be able to provide the support needed for all children.
Thank you. What are your plans when it comes to dealing with special education departments? How do you plan to make things right with the parents if they come to you with concerns?
Well, thus far, most parents who have come, and there's been quite a few, really, I just meet with the parents and try to address what their concerns are, which usually all have to do with evaluations or not having enough services. One of the things that I've discovered in conversations with my director of special education, Ms. Johnson, is looking at providing that equity that's needed for our scholars. So I know I spoke a while ago about looking at our financial and our resource allocation, which is extremely important. Not necessarily has it been in the past where decisions have been made about what students need who have an IEP based upon their needs, but instead been based upon financial decisions. And we are really taking a deep dive into looking at that. So we start off with having conversations with our special education supervisors, because those are the ones who work directly in the department with Ms. Johnson and who work directly with our building-based principals about the PPT process, the evaluation process, and how do we make decisions for students. And it cannot be made based upon fiscal resources, but they do have to be made upon what a student needs. It's also extremely important to make sure that parents are aware of what the process for special education is and what their rights are as it relates to due process, as it relates to IDEA, and making sure that that's out there so parents can engage in the conversation. We have to come to a common understanding about what that is. And then also then engage our building-based administrators and our school psychologists and support staff members in that conversation. Also part of the work is putting into practice, having what we call case studies or pre-conference meetings about, cases, so that we can come together and be able to talk about what we need to be able to provide and suggest during a PPT meeting. Making sure that parents' voices are heard. One of the most important pieces on a individualized education plan is the parent piece. And I was talking to one of my colleagues last week about how we capture that information and what I used to do as a building principal versus what she does. And though our processes were different, we made sure that that was something that was truly captured. But then when you start looking through our database, you're not seeing that. So making sure people understand what that is, making sure that during the process, there are translation interpretation services that are available. We use Linguistica here in the city of Bridgeport, which is where we call in and they can translate in any language. I mean, any language that you need, as long as we make the request. So making sure people understand it, because oftentimes when things are translated, academic language sounds very, very different than conversational language. So people don't necessarily understand what's being said. And I think that's part of the heavy lifting that as we have to do as a district, so people have a clear understanding of that work.
Thank you. The next question is, what kind of services can be provided to help autistic children that are in general education and not confined to special education?
That question is a loaded question too. And I say that because I'm the mother of an autistic son. So I fully understand the urgency around making sure children have what they need, especially those who are identified with disabilities. So I think one of the things that has to be leveraged in that conversation for students who are not identified as a student with a disability, who may have needs around that, is the conversation of the 504 plan. So the 504 plan allows for accommodations to be made without a student being identified as special education, and really letting calling the conference in the school, letting the administrator know that these are some of your concerns as a parent, and engaging in that process so that they are able to receive some supports. It doesn't mean, and I want to clarify this, it doesn't mean that a child who has autism cannot learn, because that is a fallacy. What is extremely important is to note is that they learn differently. And everybody needs to understand that because they learn differently means we as educators have to move differently. One of the things that I experienced as a parent of a student in BPS, my child was placed out of district, and it was one of the worst decisions that I ever made, and I regret it to this day because the conversation changed and shifted from a student who learns differently to him talking about a disability. And I never taught him about a disability. I was like, I don't want to hear that. We're going to read this book, and you're going to be okay with reading this book because you need to be able to do this. And it being able to build capacity around what it is that you need to be able to have access to. So I think it's extremely important that we reframe the conversation so people understand that. And leveraging the 504 process is one of the tools that can be used to do so.
Thank you. We are a district that pilots many programs which ultimately may not serve our student population, especially schools with high ML and SPED populations, and see frequent turnover in terms of programming regarding literacy and mathematic instructions, especially K through 8. How will you help promote scientifically research-based curriculum programs that are appropriate for all students?
So currently, all of the curriculum that is in Bridgeport Public Schools is researched. It's based upon growth. It shows that students are able to grow if it is implemented with fidelity. I think it's extremely important to understand that SRBI, which is what is being referred to there, is talking about a process for students who may be struggling, who may not be meeting grade level expectations. So making sure that there is a solid process of how we identify students. So for instance, we start school at the end of August. So we start looking at some triggers. So that may be students who are chronically absent. It may be students who are being removed from the classroom because of behaviors. It may be students who are engaging in task avoidance. So identifying what those are and what are the steps to take to be able to implement SRBI with fidelity, with proven strategies. And I think that comes from the professional development that we need to do at the school level to be able to make sure we have that. And that also speaks to the utilization of time and resources in the school building. If we're looking at schedule and time as a resource, when we're looking at creating our ELA blocks of 90 minutes, and we create those small group instruction times, during that time, we need to be able to have additional resources to be able to push into those grade levels to help students who are struggling and have deficits to be able to be exposed to grade level expectations and to be able to meet targeted growths. We also need to leverage our technology that we have in our technology-based programs accordingly to be able to address some of those needs as well.
Thank you. How will you help to promote consistent efforts that invite parent and community voice? Can you give an example of a past initiative that did this?
So parent and community voice. So I will have to go back to my time as a leader of Dunbar. So some of the things as an initiative, what we would do, we did this prior to pandemic, is we would have, as we opened up the school year, we would identify a time or a day prior to school year. We would invite people from within the community as well as parents and stakeholders to come and hear about what was going to happen at the school. They would be able to engage in a tour. They'd be able to meet the teachers, but this was all prior to the start of the school year. So it created an opportunity for people to get to know each other without it being under contractual restraints. You know, that comes with relationships. To do something like that, you got to have staff who are willing to be able to give up their time to do that. And that's extremely important. And you got to have people who are willing to come out and do so as well. One of the things that we also did is we did a signing ceremony for our 8th grade students who were going on to high school. So we would invite people from within the community to come out and support our students. So for each 8th grader who was identified to go to a school, there would be somebody, whether it's a parent, a staff member, or somebody from within the community, who would walk down with this student and celebrate their accomplishment as they matriculated on to grade 9. So those are some of the things that we've done. I know one of the things that we are planning on doing at the onset of the school year, we've been in conversations with March for Education about celebrating education as a whole at the end of August 27th, I believe is the date, where we can celebrate just coming back together as a school, as a school district, excuse me, and moving in a new direction, renewal, regrowth, and reinvigorating what needs to happen in schools and getting excited about it so people will be able to hear from us as educators and engage the community in that conversation.
Thank you. How will you address or initiate conversations with the state on student testing?
So one of the things where I'm engaged, and actually I had a meeting today, is we're going to be engaged in a research study really talking about the impacts of COVID-19 and how it has impacted our students in various capacities. And then once we've engaged that, that's going to be part of district level work, as well as some conversations with administrators and teachers to gather some data and talk about how those impacts are relative in Bridgeport Public Schools and how it relates to districts across the state of Connecticut. So that way we could then start having conversations about assessment, specifically state assessments, and how that has reflected in student performance, and what we need to do as a district, as well as the supports that we need from the state to be able to level that playing field and get either additional funds or additional resources to be able to support our student growth.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you plan to leverage the community resources, nonprofits, universities, etc., that are available to support staff and students and families?
So with universities right now, it's really engaging in university partnerships to move our para to teacher population. So we have lots of paraprofessionals who are here who work in the district who want to become teachers. So starting programs, we have one with the University of Hartford, as well as Southern Connecticut State University right now. We're also looking to engage in conversations about getting in new student teachers or interns from surrounding universities. So we're doing that with Sacred Heart University, the University of Bridgeport right now. But being able to create opportunities where we're able to do something like a student fair. One of the things that was done in 2019 is we did a summit for students in grades 8 to 12. And we put that together. It was approximately about 300 to 400 students who came out that day. And we worked with various community stakeholders, myself as well as 2 colleagues. And this is just at the level of principalship that we engaged in that process to be able to make sure that we had opportunities for students. And they talked about financial literacy at that time. We received support from community organizations, fraternities, and sororities who came in and provided opportunities to be able to talk about career paths, entrepreneurship, banking. It was a wonderful opportunity for students to engage in that. So we want to do more work like that, but we want to do it centered around opportunities at the collegiate level and promoting, the ability to be able to go on and be able to receive ECE credits, because that's some of the work that we're doing at the high school as well. Central High School is undergoing a huge initiative as it relates to pre-AP courses, so that we can start creating pathways for students to be able to earn those college credits at the high school level. And part of that work entails that we have to be able to have relationships with local universities. So that is some of the work that we are currently engaged in.
Thank you. The next question and last question would be, would you strive to have full-time, well-trained paraprofessionals in K and first grade classes?
Definitely would strive to do that, because it's extremely important. K and 1 classes, according to our current contract, there's a max of 24 students there, which is a lot for grades for the students who are of that age, as well as Currently, we have them in our pre-K classes. So we want to have them there, but I have to be very honest. We have to look at what fiscal resources that we have to be able to do that work. And right now, I can't say that we have them. We have leveraged partnerships with grandparent foster programs where volunteers come in and work in those specific grade levels. Usually it's K-2. It did fall off during the pandemic, but that is something that we have leveraged to get additional supports in that. So I think it's important for supervision as well as to provide support academically to students. It helps with small group instruction, social emotionally for students who've never been in a school setting, who need additional supports as well. And just thinking of safety in general, you will want another set of eyes on your 4, 5, or 6-year-old. So we can strive to do so, but there's going to be some difficult decisions that will have to be made based upon the resources that we have.
Thank you. Thank you. At this moment, as I promised, I ask that each and every one of you come to the front table and receive a survey. You could be able to survey both candidates. You could take two, so you can survey both of them or one of them, however you please. Please do that now and leave them before you go. So please do that now. Your survey will be presented to the Board of Education members. Yes. Yep.
Don't just make a few pounds.
Thank you, Gladys.
Yeah, make a few pounds.
You got the right
Yes. There's a pile over there.
Everyone, please don't leave. I just want to reiterate the last part for tonight, and then you can exit the building. So please grab a survey. I want to make sure anyone before you leave. And there's a pen, so spend some time. There's 3 piles. There you go, 3 piles. There you go.
I'll take one.
Not yet. Oh, there's no more pens. Yep, you can do it. Yep. Also, I'll wait. Go ahead. There's pencils at the table where Miss Arlene is. There's pencils over there. So just take a moment. Yep. How are you? Yes, you could turn them into Miss Arlene and then I'll grab them after. Yes.
I came in midway on the.
So I'm gonna, if I could just have everyone quiet. Can I just have everyone quiet? Clap once if you can hear me. Clap twice if you can hear me. All right, this is important information. I'm gonna say the name of the candidates again because some of you have asked. So the first candidate was Dr. Carmela Levy-David. Carmela Levy-David. The second, The second candidate is Miss Alicia Perrin. Miss Alicia Perrin. So spend some time, have a seat, do that real quickly. I just want to remind you all that, again, the way that it's going to go for the rest of the week, the Board of Education will take in consideration your thoughts and concerns on tonight's forum. We will meet again with our final candidate, which is Miss Perrin, on tomorrow. I'll wait for you guys. I have to do my teacher voice. I'll wait for you. All right. I'll wait for you. Okay. Shh. Can I just have everyone's attention, please? Can I have your attention for those that are remaining? We will meet tomorrow with Ms. Perrin for the last part. As I mentioned earlier, we've done dinner with each candidate. Well, both of the candidates, the first candidate we did dinner. We'll do dinner with this candidate as well. We will meet, the board will discuss. On Monday, June 12th, the board will meet at a regular board meeting. And if
everything goes well, we will make our announcement at that meeting. So the same crowd that came to this meeting, I expect to see them. We expect to see you on Monday, June 12th at what time? What time? 6:30. And you're going to be at this location. All right? So please do that. After you're done with your surveys, please hand them to Miss Arlene. I will gather them and the board will discuss again on tomorrow. All right, so take a moment and do that. Well said, board chair. Everyone on the form, it asks what stakeholder group are you from? So if you're a parent, a teacher, a political leader, whatever you may come from that you consider as a stakeholder group, you will put that there. If you're a pastor, you know. Right over there. You're going to turn them in over there. Oh yeah, please return back those pins. You cannot keep the pins. We need them. Saving all of our resources, Vice Sweetheart.